Welcome everyone. I'm here with a good old friend, Ravinder Deol. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm really bad because I had a milkshake tall like this, full of sugar and like liquor, and so my mental performance obviously is a bit down. Even the branded coffee cannot help so much in here. And we're here in beautiful New York City.
So beautiful.
Sort of
Yeah,
you today, rainy. But like if you have happiness inside, then you can make the best out of it.
of course, of course.
So what brought you to New York? Maybe first question.
So I'm here for the whole month. So I've been, well, for anyone who doesn't know, I kind of spend a lot of my time traveling. So yeah, I've been in New York quite often this whole year. So I'm here for the Christmas period, and then back to Europe for New Year's. It's a great time. It's a great place. It's a great point in time, like December time, to be in New York. It's Christmas. Yeah, they kind of got all out. So yeah, it's nice to be back in a big city after being obviously where we met in Malta.
That was interesting because I think we got in touch over the internet and then randomly
actually.
bumped into each other
walking
in
down-
Baluta Bay. Yeah,
Walking down the street, and then you invited me to the
like,
conference.
that's that guy.
Yeah, and then we went to the conference that evening. So that's quite random. I actually forgot about that. And you were the one who spotted the T-shirt.
So you are location independent.
Yes.
You don't have a house. You don't own an apartment. You don't pay rent for a year. You don't have a yearly rental contract. You spend time in hotels, Airbnbs, apartments. How does that go?
Yeah. So location independence is one way. Is the term that's most commonly used. And that's right. Yeah, I don't have a 12-month or fixed rental contract. I did. But what I found was I wasn't spending any time there. So I had like this 12-month contract for an apartment in Malta. It was a beautiful apartment, don't get me wrong, and I spent time decorating it and stuff to make it more homely. But I just wasn't spending enough time in there to justify spending nearly €1,000 a month on rent. I could be spending that far, far better elsewhere and just taking advantage of the low cost of living in other places in the world, for example, in Poland, which I absolutely love. So I could spend part of the year there, save, for lack of a better word, a shit ton of money on rent. And then, like, if I want to come to New York in December, I can. And it's a more expensive part of the world, but it's kind of, let's say, I don't know, maybe a word to phrase it is rental arbitrage in kind of a way. I've just saved that much on rent that it doesn't really matter that I'm spending X amount on an Airbnb for a whole month in a certain part of the world that's a little more expensive because I've saved a ton of money elsewhere.
What drives you to travel so much?
I don't know what drives me to travel much. I mean, quick backstory. I'd never been, up until let me think, the exact age, up until I was like 20, I'd never been to anywhere other than Tenerife and India. I'd never been to mainland Europe, never been to America. And so it was only since like 21 I started really exploring everywhere else. Going to America, I'm going to Europe and moving to Malta. And now I think the reason that motivates me just to go places, one, I mean, the price difference. I think it amazes people when they go somewhere else in the world. They'll be like, how is this so cheap here? And that's not just because it's cheap, because the people have a poor quality of life in that country. There's a whole load of reasons about why it's so cheap, and they in fact having an even better quality of life. So that's one, just to kind of experience all that and see how the world works. I'm quite interested in geopolitics. I don't know enough about it yet to discuss it at depth, but I know it's something that interests me a lot. So being able to see these things firsthand without just reading about it in like the Financial Times or something is something that I'm sure will be invaluable in the future. So I'd say that's a big part, being able to see all this stuff firsthand. And I'm sure other generations have said it, but I don't think there's a better time to be able to go around and see all these places. I mean, how much was your Norwegian Air flight to New York?
Yeah, like €100.
Exactly. I don't know how they do it. I do not know how they do it. But I mean, you'd spend that on a steak in a big city somewhere. You can fly halfway around the world for that now. And that just blows my mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think a lot of it comes together. The cost to travel different places is so low nowadays. Being able to experience things firsthand and to gain a different perspective which I think you can't get from watching movies or documentaries or books. You have to see it firsthand. Stuff has to go wrong while you're there. Stuff has to go right, and that's how you gain that perspective.
I think it's definitely a very attractive lifestyle for young people. Instead of after school, let's say, go study and then go work in the same city in a job. But a big problem people face perhaps is they are tied to family, to their job. So I mean, maybe touch relationship first. Like how are you dealing with your family, with your girlfriend? Is she traveling with you, or you just have found a way to spend time abroad?
Yeah, that's difficult. I mean, can't talk from the perspective of like a parent. I'm sure it'd be far more difficult then. But talking the perspective from my own relationships, like family and stuff, it's good in one way because I can just go back whenever I want and see them. In another way, I can spend months and not see them at all. So I think you just have to get to grips with that and understand if that's the kind of lifestyle you want or you don't want. Personal relationship-wise, girlfriend-wise, it's good that she's also able to travel, perhaps not as much as me. But it's also good that she can. So we've been to Singapore, we've been to Belgium and all these other places. So sometimes she'll meet me at certain places that I am, sometimes I'll meet her. So I think it's good to have that understanding. And if you do get into a relationship, I think that has to be pretty clear. Like if one of you's really into like traveling and stuff, if you're then going to be tied down, so-called to speak, is that going to make you happy or more miserable? So I think that's something like self-awareness when you get into a relationship. You need to understand that for yourself. Otherwise, you're not really going to have a healthy relationship. So yeah, that's something obviously that needs to be discussed with whoever you get into a relationship with. But yeah, just having that understanding with everyone. And no doubt when you go somewhere and then you come back, you definitely come back a more richer person. Like at some points you could have changed for good or for worse. But yeah, I think it's just being open in the communication. Otherwise, you can feel isolated as well. It's not like it's great. You go everywhere, you see everything. There's also isolation, which I don't think a lot of people talk about. It's quite lonely. Going places and then like you don't know anyone, and then you have to go out, like essentially force yourself to meet people. That becomes quite challenging for some people. So there's also the isolation factor. Hence why co-working spaces are great and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it's about being.
Depends also on your networking skills and your like comfort zone.
Exactly. So it matters. There's so many ways in which it matters. But yeah, I think the isolation part, I think people think it's great. They're going to go so many places. But I also think a lot of people get isolated by it as well because they don't have that day-to-day communication. When it comes to location independence, if someone strikes out on their own and does their own business, if they've left a job, I think the good thing about a job is that you're kind of forced to communicate. There's people there in the office, and I think people forget how much of a big thing it is to then go to working for yourself, where you don't have that day-to-day communication.
I mean, I might think if you travel anyways, that is already a something out of your comfort zone. So to add that little bit of extra spice to kind of build up new connections, which of course might not be lasting forever, which might be like just one-time connections, and yet like you can also decided that you travel just to like 5 different spots and come back there and build a community in all these places and meet the friends, in whatever, Indonesia every year again. But it's like if you're already traveling, I think that's less of a problem versus if you're unhappy at home and you like see the same friends over and over again, and like then you don't grow and improve at all, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
and I think that becomes a bit of a bubble then, because you're then hearing the same thing. You're kind of, like you said, unhappy. And it becomes very hard to break out of that because a whole lot of peer pressure then comes into it. And I think sometimes that's
the pack needs to stick together.
Exactly. And I think sometimes like it's great coming to big cities like New York, to London and whatever. But I think you see that more often there, where there's like this certain like clique, so-called to speak, where you have to have a certain job, you have to have a certain income, you have to eat at a certain place. And a lot of the people don't actually enjoy that, but they got to keep up with that lifestyle, and that become quite miserable in the end.
You talked about that you that here in New York, especially, right? Like a lot of people, they have to go in debt in order to to keep paying the bills.
Exactly. I mean, it's an expensive place. So it's one of those. You see it in pretty much most big cities in the world, where a lot of people are trying to keep up with themselves, by spending it before it comes in, essentially. And on the front, perhaps even happy. I mean, if they enjoy that, that's great. But if a lot of people don't, I think it's hard for them to get out of that.
Yeah, it's the inflation debt world. Let's move on to like the actually interesting things. A man must build a house, must plant a tree, must make a child.
Yeah.
So, what kind of opportunities do young people have right now, especially bearing in mind that you want to have a business that doesn't maybe require you to be at one place all the time?
Yeah.
Which basically comes down to, okay, you need to find something online. Can you give us like your backstory? Like, how did you decide to, maybe like that, what was the first dollar you made on the internet?
First dollar, I have to go back quite a while actually. The first dollar would probably be just like selling
eBay.
stuff on eBay.
Yeah.
Literally that.
That's a cool feeling,
I still do it
first auction.
Exactly, I still do it every now and again. Although eBay's getting ridiculously full of scammers and people who just bid and buy your stuff without then don't pay.
And that's also, it's a great training because it's trading, right? Like you have to find a good price.
It's the most basic level of business. Buy something for a lower price, sell it for a higher price. You can't get more basic than that. Yeah, you can't.
But it can turn into something really big, right? Like huge Amazon.
Exactly. I mean, the amount of people that have started like just basic eBay stores and then built it up to like multi-million-dollar e-commerce brands is like a crazy amount. So yeah, being able that basic building block of just understanding how online business works and using these platforms. You don't need to go and set up your own site initially. Just leverage the platforms because they've done essentially all the marketing for you. And that's an easier way to get started.
Now you're somebody who is interested in new ideas, who is like, thinking about innovation, thinking about edges. For example, like I remember you were also participating the Seth Godin Alt MBA. What was the idea leverages the business, right? So instead of doing like something that everyone can do, like selling coffee online or Amazon, fulfillment by Amazon, like what was the first business that you set up and said like, wow, that's a good idea, and like you made money online?
I set up loads of good ideas that I thought were at the time, and they turned out to perhaps not be so good ideas. At one point, I was trying to sell my own popcorn online, so I was making popcorn at home. Try and guess the name of that business.
E-pop.
Popcorn Star. So that was something at one point. I mean, I tried selling Indian snacks and sweets online, like a Graze model, which is like online snack subscription. Couldn't get it to work, and I found out that I didn't actually enjoy doing food businesses. There was a lot of legislation around it, naturally, as there should be, but that didn't feel suited for me. So there's a lot of trial and error. And then I kind of fell into kind of the online training, information products, so-called to speak area, because of the work that I was doing. And that's where I kind of first set up, let's say, my first financially successful business, which was training people on cryptocurrency and blockchain technologies. So that was the first, let's say, financially successful business that I set up, which then allowed me to gain leverage to do other stuff like the MBA and set up other projects, because I had that first like cornerstone, that leverage that I could use to then go work on other projects as well.
How did you build that up? Like, how long did it take you to have the cash flow to grow it, and like what was the process into?
I mean, the first month I put out a course, we got sales, not a lot. I think it was like $40-50 in sales, but still, by putting something out and then seeing people that are buying it, it's quite empowering. It wasn't until like at least a year in where we started seeing enough revenue where I was like, okay, I'm happy with this. But then as with anything, it just becomes like a scorecard. So, okay, how can I improve it? How can I get it a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better? But like I think it took at least a good year to get that running. I mean, now I'd start it in a different way and I'd take a different approach. But once again, that's part of the learning process. I wouldn't just put out a paid product that took me like a month to create. But that's part of the learning process, which I can now use when I set up other projects.
Are you still a believer in Bitcoin? And would you suggest, for example, online stores to at least learn about it and research it to an extent?
Yes. Oh, I'm still a massive believer in it. No question of a doubt about that.
Because like now we talked about like you're not focused on that specific venture so much anymore, right?
Yeah. So I'm not kind of 100% focused on it as I was before. I'm still running it and I'm still working on it, but it doesn't have 100% of my focus anymore. But no question of a doubt, whenever I can, I still talk about it, and I still talk about the positive effects that it has. I also talk about the negative effects, like how people need to stay secure. So by negative, I mean security implications that people impose on themselves.
Yeah, we can talk about this.
Yeah. So yeah, I still talk about all the positives around it.
So what is the number one reason, for example, why? I mean, I always like to say, like, you know, I think as an online business, you may not need to accept crypto or Bitcoin right now because still like it's such a niche. But I think long term, it definitely makes sense to understand that I mean, Bitcoin is will be the native currency of the internet, and you can do so many things from, you know, developing little apps, optimizing things. It will change so many aspects. What is in your eyes kind of the reason why a business may want to look, especially if it's online, like learn and study and like gain knowledge in Bitcoin?
I mean, if they're working online, especially, they have a digital business. This is essentially digital payments. So it's kind of the natural next step. If they want to learn more about money, so how they're earning money, I think learning about Bitcoin is a good stepping stone because it helps you dive far deeper into learning how the financial system works. And other than that, it opens up a new avenue. So some people might not want to spend dollars, pounds, euros. They might want to spend some of their Bitcoin. Are you going to deny a customer? So it's just another avenue. And on top of that, it's a great marketing opportunity by saying you're financially or your Bitcoin acceptant business. It's a great marketing opportunity for a lot of businesses as well.
I think also a big opportunity lies in the disruptive factor of Bitcoin. That what most people don't know is really like there's a growing number of people that get unbanked because banks don't allow them. They don't pass the compliance, although they are just ordinary people because the compliance is so crazy. And also just in other markets where it's not that, you know, developed, like in the West, where people don't have banking and like also the fees are high. So I think there's a growing number of people that really enjoy once they get familiar with it, once more adopt and stuff. And then of course, I mean, there are certain high risk areas maybe where like, Stripe doesn't work. Let's compare it. Like right now, you basically have, because we talked about it, you need to decide what you can share from the internals, like your setup, but I think it's an interesting way. Okay, so you have an online business. What structure do you use for the legal entity? How is it connected with your accounting? What's the cost for the accounting? What payment services you use? And now since I know it, so this is all based on third-party providers, right? So with Bitcoin, you would have the same result, which essentially in your case is like no hassle anymore, right? It's like all automated. With Bitcoin, you could go straight from A to B without all the stuff in between. Yeah. But maybe you can give us a little overview of your architecture backend.
So I mean, setup right now, I'm super content with like the setup that I have. So as with anyone, they'll do Google searches and get third-party YouTube videos and so on. So initially, I was a UK registered company as a British citizen, which made sense when I was living there full-time. But I quickly stopped living there full-time. So on a personal level, it didn't make sense to continue paying corporation tax at, I believe it's 19% right now. They're hovering around 19-20%. Didn't make sense. Because I wasn't living there full time. So after I moved to Malta, I considered setting up a company there. Once again, the laws are pretty similar to England, Malta-wise. Not taxation percentage-wise, but process-wise. But once again, as with England, Malta and England, I was kind of just taken aback by the complexity. I like things to be simple. Like, I don't like to call myself a minimalist because it's quite cliched, but I just like things to be simple and pretty straightforward. So I was always looking around for kind of options. And then the e-residency scheme kind of popped up. And
Estonia.
Yes, Estonian e-residency. And I believe Azerbaijan's testing it now as well.
Yeah, I think also Lithuania or like the next country there.
Yeah, so the countries are, I don't know if anyone's from Latvia or Lithuania that's listening. From what I've heard, they're quite jealous of Estonia's program, so they might be implementing it. I'm not sure. I know Poland is talking about implementing it, which would be very interesting.
Yeah.
Because obviously they have their own currency as well. It's not euro.
I mean, it's such a good trend in general that kind of, because they need to update their IT, so they need to have people, because like it's really like the Estonian, they've done it quite. I mean, okay, if you go there, it's still like a bureaucratic department. It doesn't look nice. It's still like a lot of paperwork and stuff. But still, like the approach is so much more capitalist, so much more service oriented, so much more customer and business, and that just changes the perspective of the people. Yeah, like we have to work like a service company, so we cannot fuck with our clients so much anymore, like any other government is doing right now, right? Like, and that's a good trend in general. And the more they compete, right, the better everything will be. Yeah.
So it's like when I set up my UK company, I set up a bank account with Barclays, and actually you go into the bank, they ask you what you do. I said we do cryptocurrency and blockchain training, and it took exactly. It took them 6 weeks to set me up a bank account.
Say no.
Yeah, so I had 6 weeks of no banking. Which was frustrating. I had no answers, nothing. I had to go like 3 times.
I mean, here, sadly, Udemy doesn't pay out in Bitcoin.
Exactly. No, they don't. It would have been interesting if they implemented that option, at least a portion of it.
Yeah.
You could be then paid out.
You could have done it with your, I don't know, that like, okay, so the problem is, as long as you accept fiat anywhere, like you can, of course, you can convert it into Bitcoin and pay out yourself in Bitcoin, but like it doesn't really make sense because Stripe, like they cannot do it.
And then if you do that, then you're going to get quite a few accounting problems.
Yeah.
It complicates it.
Where's the money going?
Yeah, exactly. It complicates that a little bit more. But yeah, back to the e-residency thing, Estonia. I set up a bank account with LHV, so it's an Estonian bank. Got on a flight to Estonia, went straight to the bank. Within 10 minutes, I had my account set up, card, everything. And that's how it should be.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, everything's done online. Like I file my accounts every single month. They're very transparent. They say, okay, 0% corporate tax, 20% if you want dividends, pay yourself a salary. It's just everything's very straightforward. It's not like they're trying to screw you over or they're trying to hide little clauses so they can fine you somehow. Everything's straightforward. And to be honest, I don't have a problem paying tax there if they make it that easy and that straightforward. And yeah, the e-residence scheme is generally for companies which are, like myself, like location independent, and they don't necessarily have a fixed address. I know, for example, if you have a drop shipping company, then e-residency isn't an option really. But even with e-residency, you're still liable for tax in your home country. Yeah. So, for example, if you're a citizen of England and you're living there, you have your Estonian company, you still have to pay personal income tax in England. You're just not paying corporate tax. But yeah, the one thing I appreciate about that setup and why I'm so happy with it is the transparency, how simple it is, and how friendly it is to kind of businesses and helping you grow. So they actually want to help you grow, not just fine you for growing, in essence.
Yeah. I think it's definitely like, although, you know, like coming from a big welfare state like Germany or UK, like that's why that gives you a big reason to say no, and like simplicity. Because in these welfare states, like you have such a huge overhead with bureaucracy and stupid questions. There's still a little bit of bureaucracy to be dealt with those setups, but I think a big problem is actually the banking side, right?
Yes.
So how do you deal, for example, with utility bills, where if you need a new bank account? I mean, if once you set up, it's maybe okay until they cut you off for some reason. But I mean, and then again, you know, compare this to Bitcoin. Nobody asks, you know, you just have a wallet. You can receive payments from any place in the world without any censorship. And yet right now, still, like we are dependent partly on the banking. So how many bank accounts do you have actually?
Right now, I believe I'm standing at
500.
5. No, far too complicated. No, 5.
5 that you use.
Split over 5. Obviously,
that's not so much.
That includes multi-currency accounts, so like one of the euro account, a pound account. So I'm classing them as different accounts.
But do you have one which is an actual bank, or more like this payment processor bank?
Yes. No, I do have actual. So LHV Bank, which is Estonian. So that's an actual bank. Obviously, TransferWise is something I regularly use. I have a UK bank account, which would be Halifax. But other than that, I'd say LHV is like the official business bank account that I use that actually has branches, which sounds like a very old way of talking about it now, because you don't really go into the bank anymore. You just send like a payment processor an email, like TransferWise, to discuss whatever you want to discuss. So yeah, that's how many I'm standing at right now.
You touched on it before, the privacy part. And so I think for Bitcoiners, if you really understand what Bitcoin is about, of course, like some people, they just look at it and they say, okay, I know it, or invest, or like I buy on an exchange and that's it, but really if you study private key security, inevitably you will kind of fall down the rabbit hole, and you will figure out, okay, wow, the amount of data breaches, the centralization of the databases, where there's crucial information, which gets actually worse now with, for example, like with the banking compliance, like my passport is floating around, so many third-party KYC verification companies, like there can be a breach anywhere at any time. So what was your, because most entrepreneurs, they go and say like, I don't care, if a service is free, that's the best, then I save money. Who cares? Nobody reads the terms and conditions of any online product. It could be a complete ripoff. They sell your data 10 times. What was your way into becoming like really privacy aware, interested, even to the point where you said, okay, like I'm implementing alternatives now?
Yeah. So I had my emails hacked actually. So that was a good starting point.
How did this go exactly?
No idea. I was actually on a holiday in Belgium. Logged into.
Oh, you do a holiday, really?
Yeah, I do. With no internet, no nothing. I'm just like nothing, no internet, nothing. No one can contact me. I was like, this is great. So I do that every once in a while. It's quite good to just be there and without any connection to anything. I did it in Indonesia and it's fantastic. And when you come back, you actually realize you didn't really miss anything. But yeah, anyway, back to the point. Security stuff. Yeah, I had my email. So being involved in Bitcoin and stuff generally, you become more privacy aware. But as much as you tell someone to be privacy aware, they generally won't unless something happens to them, like they have a breach. So my emails got hacked. So I was pretty privacy conscious already. I had certain stuff installed, but this maybe take it a step further. So now I'm slowly switching my emails over to a different provider. I use anonymous search engines like DuckDuckGo. Now, there's only a certain point at which you can become so privacy conscious. Like as soon as you're connected to Wi-Fi, you're going to be found by like a mobile tower signal network. But there are steps you can take to limit the exposure. But like we've gone past the point, in my opinion, where you can kind of go back and be essentially unknown. You can limit it, but you can't be completely unknown. I mean, some of the things that I'm implementing, which we talked about, is I don't use Google Analytics anymore. One, I don't need to know all that data. Two, I don't like it when all that data is known about me at a website. So if I don't like it, why should I attract people to come to my website? So I use services like Fathom Analytics, which is fantastic. So it gives you just the details you need to know. So I know how many visitors are coming. I think I know which country they're coming from, what links they're coming from. And that's pretty much as I need to know right now. I don't need to know anything else. I don't really do Facebook advertising. To be honest, I think a lot of advertising now would become zoned out to it. The only advertising I think works, well, from my experience that I've tried, is retargeting. They have to constantly be in someone's face for a long time before they end up purchasing. Very rarely someone will see an ad on Facebook or Google and then just go buy that thing straight away. I can't think of one single case where I've done that. So for me to think it'll work when I do an advertisement is quite naive, because if it doesn't work on me, why is it going to work on someone else? But those are just some of the ways in which I've become more, let's say, security conscious, like using anonymous tracking tools on my website, like Fathom Analytics. So I don't exactly know who the user is, but I know enough about them. Using engines like DuckDuckGo and stuff like that. I think it's good to become more conscious, and then as I've become more conscious, then I implement that into my business. And it's not had a negative impact as many would think it does. I mean, the amount of data points that are being measured, the majority of the people don't use all those data points. It's just unnecessary data that's being gathered.
Yeah, thankfully also the alternatives come better. I think most people tap into, using the internet really naively. So they don't really think about the stuff they upload on Facebook. It's just like, it's fun, and they don't read anything about it. So I think, for an entrepreneur, similar to the location dependent lifestyle and the tax optimization, what really counts is like, I want to control my life. Like, I want to have control as much as possible over my own life, on all aspects of life, right? So and then on the internet world, we just have to realize, okay, like, this is also our lives. It's our data, right? Like, it's just online, right? But we should apply the same values, the same principles, that it's our data, we own it, and why should I give it to a random third party and they can do anything with it, with my data, right? So that just doesn't make sense. But most people still have to learn these lessons, right? And then second is maybe also like we talked about before. So the alternatives become better, and it's a signal to the market, right? Like, the more people kind of demand to like, for alternatives, the better they come. I think Proton Mail is a great example, right? Like, they're so successful. They just got donated, like, over the time they're in existence, they got donated 200 Bitcoin, right? And I think it's a profitable business, right? So it's great. So like, showing or signaling to the market, like, that's the service I like, and like, support it, kind of like support your local dealer, instead of like going to any corporate big player. What other reasons do you may have to say, like, I'm really precise with the partnerships I go into online?
Yeah, so I think a big part of that is my philosophy of creating an online business. So I don't think I can't say it right now, but I don't think I will ever take a huge amount of funding from, let's say, a venture capitalist firm. I prefer I just prefer the bootstrapped approach, and the freedom that comes with it. I don't want to have to answer to someone every single month and say, this is the update. Some months will be good, some months will be bad. As long as it averages out over the 12-month period better, I'm happy with that. So I've made that conscious decision to try and use bootstrap businesses like Fathom Analytics instead of Google Analytics. And to be honest, the cost doesn't break the bank. It's $14 a month. If your website's making $1,000 a month, you can stomach the cost of $14 a month to pay for a decent analytics service. It's not a fortune. So yeah, I'm far more conscious about businesses that I use. If they're bootstrapped, fantastic. I'll probably more likely to use them. If they're the better, they've still got to be the better alternative. Don't get me wrong, but I'll be more inclined to use them than, let's say, a hugely funded VC company.
Which is free then.
Exactly.
But the freedom comes with a toll.
Yeah, because it's free. You're the product. They're using your data for something. So there's always that trade-off. There's always a trade-off. And at some point, you might not be able to afford the trade-off, so you use it for free. But then if you have the luxury to be able to pay to use a service which doesn't have that trade-off, then that's open. And it's only like the last few years where I've been able to have that trade-off and that leverage to be able to use these services. Yeah.
Great. Maybe last question, more like lifestyle or like life hack. So what is your favorite ritual, maybe, or like your favorite little trick to relax?
Okay, little trick to relax.
Besides coffee, although
no, that keeps you wide.
Keeps you,
it's kind of cheap cup.
But do you meditate? Maybe like that.
No.
No. Okay. Do you do any other like activities that you like really enjoy?
Yeah, I turn all the Wi-Fi off and don't connect to the internet.
That's it. Simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect meditation. Yeah. I mean, hundreds of years ago, we weren't saying, okay.
But people don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, they'd be like, okay, I've got to check. I'm going to get a message. I was like, if it's that serious, if it's that.
And how long do you take it off?
I've done it for like a whole week. I've done it for a whole weekend. Especially like when I go away, like I went on holiday for a weekend to Indonesia when I was in Asia. I just didn't take my phone or my laptop. I just wrote the address down on the back of my notebook of the hotel. And I was like, the world's not such like a crazy place as people think. Everyone understands thank you. Wherever you go in the world, doesn't matter where you go. You could be China, you could be in America, you could be anywhere. Everyone understands smile. But yeah, I don't meditate. I think being disconnected from the internet is enough meditation that I need to be able to be happy and just start to appreciate kind of everything that's going on. And you appreciate a lot more and you understand a lot more when you're not connected, because you actually have time to think. You're not just getting information overload that I was telling you. You're actually in your own thoughts and trying to come to your own conclusion, which I think is very important, which is part of me limiting my information resources going into the next year. So you just have more time for yourself to think and figure it out for yourself, which is what I want. Yeah.
produce yourself.
Exactly. And you know, think in your own thoughts and come to your own conclusions, and be able to publish more. So that's one thing I'm doing this year. I want to be able to create more rather than consuming it all the time. I mean, there's information everywhere, articles being released. I mean, you can't really call them articles if they're being released every 10 minutes by like BuzzFeed. It's just junk content. So being able to have more high quality news sources and stuff like that. But yeah, one thing I'm starting to use now is a calendar. So it surprises many people. For the whole of my business that I've had career, I've never used a calendar for scheduling or anything. I've just kind of written stuff down, jotted it down, and remembered it in my head. But being able to take that out of my head and just put it onto a calendar just frees up so much more space. It's such a simple thing, but for me, it's quite a big thing to do because I've never done it before. So the less things that I'm essentially consuming that are junk, the better, because it gives me more time to think things out and experiment, which is what it's all about. Some things will work, some things won't, but you just got to keep experimenting.
Maybe at this point, very quick, what was your key takeaway from the Seth Godin Alt MBA? I think it was also that way, like just fucking do it, produce.
Yeah, exactly. So that was it. Just do it. Like don't overthink it. So we had to ship something every 2 days. So we just like put it out there. You're gonna get criticism no matter what. You'll get good feedback. You'll get bad feedback. You're gonna improve. Yeah, it's sometimes it'll be good. Sometimes it'll be bad. You're not a machine. You're not AI. It's not gonna be perfect every single time. You're a human. So yeah, the whole premise of it was just to ship, and I think it's a mental block some people have where they just don't ship. And I was the same thing, exactly. I was exactly the same. So yeah, it was just the whole thing of getting out of that frame where it has to be perfect, and just pushing it out there.
Last question, like although unprepared, I'm sorry, but the famous Timothy Ferry's billboard question. So if you would have billboard space, what would you put on there? Or maybe other phrase, other way around is like, okay, like your last address for like young people, what to do with their life, maybe like that.
I think I'm gonna steal it from Naval Ravikant. I can't remember where he posted it. I just know that I kind of remember it all the time. Is that if you learn how to sell and you learn how to build, you're pretty much set up for your whole life. So by that, he meant if you know software development, if you know how to market this stuff and sell it, you'll pretty much never struggle to earn a living. So that was my philosophy. It's come back to skill building, actual real skill building, and not posting rubbish on Instagram saying you're making $1,000 a day doing nothing. Real skill building and becoming skillful at something. And it doesn't take as long as people think to gain a proficient understanding on something, regardless of what it is, whether it's software engineering. I mean, if so many other people can be software engineers, I'm sure the person who is thinking about it can as well. It's not rocket science. Even if it is, there's a time frame in which you can learn that. So yeah, I think that would be it. Learn how to build and learn how to sell, and you'll be pretty much set up for the rest of your life.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ravinder.
Thank you very much. Good to see you here in New York.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Great, thanks.